Impact Hustlers, the podcast on entrepreneurs and change makers that are creating solutions to the world's biggest problems. Impact Hustlers is brought to you by Fast Forward 2030 and Real Changers. Visit fastforward2030.com to learn how to include the global goals into your business model, and realchangers.com to find talent and careers with impact. And this is your host, Michael Shafrath.
This is Impact Hustlers, the podcast on the entrepreneurs that solve the world's biggest social and environmental problems. And I'm your host, Michael Shafrath. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode, most importantly, with a friend. To keep updated on new episodes, visit impacthustlers.com and sign up for our email alerts. And follow us on Twitter as well, at Impact Hustlers. Enjoy today's episode, and let's go. In today's episode, I speak to Graeme Risby, the CEO and co-founder of Hiyacar, a marketplace that allows everybody to share their private cars and used cars of others on an hourly basis. I've actually used this service myself, and I'm a big fan of it. I'm a London dweller and don't own my own car, so it's an amazing way for me to get around without having to have a car standing around most of the days and doing nothing for me. Hiyacar now has about 80,000 members across the UK, loads of cars in London to rent, and it's great to have you on the show, Graeme.
Pleasure to be here, so thank you for having me.
Thanks very much. So let's go back to the early days of Hiyacar. Can you tell us about how you first discovered the problem you're solving, and what was the motivation for you to dedicate many years of your life to this problem?
Yeah, it's a great starting point. So I suppose when I was growing up, it seems like a long time ago now, my two hobbies were football and cars. So from as young as I can remember, pictures of cars up on the walls and whatnot. So when I eventually turned old enough to buy a car, I managed to do really well at spending lots of money on cars. Some of them not so nice, some of them quite nice. And I suppose, I then met my partner, so who's now my wife, but we've been together for nearly 20 years, and she also liked her cars. So between us, we did very well, wasting lots of money, especially before children, on these nice vehicles. And commuting to London every day, our car used to sit in the train station car park. I would get to London. Quite a lot of my colleagues wouldn't actually own a vehicle because they didn't need to, living in a city. They would be late for work on a Monday morning. And most of the time it was because a traditional car hire company, I won't name any, but they're not open on Sundays. They didn't get the right car. They got kind of hit with different fees. And I was kind of sitting there really just thinking, I've got this car, which some of my friends used to take. They'd be like, oh, can I use your car to take a girl out on a date? So I used to call up my insurance company, get them put on, that cost me money. And basically just sat there and thought, how can I actually turn my car into an asset? I've got lots of people here that need a car. I've got a lovely car. It costs me money. How can I share that, actually help my friends and family and people in my neighborhood, and by doing so, actually turn my car into an asset? So quite a simple concept. I think one of my bugbears is where you kind of hear people saying, oh, your house is your biggest asset, your car is your second biggest asset. And it's fundamentally not true. It's your your house will generally go up in value, but your car is always going to go down in value. So this is the first time really that you can actually, people can turn their cars into an asset and help their neighbors, help people.
Amazing. And that way you have really two dimensions to your business. You have a social dimension similar to Airbnb in terms of people sharing resources, in terms of, actually adding some money to that they can spend on, on their kids, on their life, and actually another revenue stream for people. But you also have the environmental dimension to your business. How do you think about that in terms of your role in reducing car ownership? Is that a mission you have, or how do you think about car ownership and the future of mobility in urban areas?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions there, and all very exciting ones to get through. With the main one with car ownership, it's the car isn't the enemy. People need to move around. If I'm sitting here in our office in London, if I'm going to go somewhere that's 30 minutes away, I'll walk, I'll get public transport, I will use a bike. You don't need to use a car for that. But lots of us, we do need to use a car for an hour plus journey, because those other options just aren't really then particularly viable. So I suppose for us, it's getting a hire car on every street, but every car. So at the moment, I live out in the countryside in a small village. I work from home on Monday. I look out the window at 2 p.m. and there's at least 50 cars sitting there. And it's insane. There should only be 5 cars sitting there that are shared between us. So for us, it's all about utilisation. Let's reduce the amount of cars on the roads. The actual, the manufacturing of vehicles causes so much pollution just in itself. So that's less cars on the road, less cars being made, more electric vehicles, and just get sharing more. So that car that sits there idle for 97% of the time, people listening now, if you own a car, just kind of ask yourself, when's the last time, or how often do you drive your car each day? And not many people drive their car for more than 1 hour of the day. So it sits there 23 hours of the day. So let's get it used more. The miles are still going to be driven, but let's do it in a sharing way, which means there's plenty more space for our kids to play in. There are lots more green areas, lots more parks, actually people talking to one another. When I was young, I lived in a little cul-de-sac and you knew all your neighbours. Now everyone's, on their phone, or they don't really communicate. People parking outside your space, so you kind of think negatively against them, and rather than embracing them and actually sharing the car together. So I think we're very lucky because we have 3 or 4, I suppose, kind of angles that we help. Like I say, we bring in communities closer together, making people wealthier, so making money or saving money. The tech side of our business, I think it makes it a really exciting place for people to work. And some of our team members, they don't particularly like cars, but they love the social aspect of what we do. So lots of positive, sustainable actions really on the back of what we're doing.
Are you a car company at heart, or let's say a car-based company? You don't actually own any cars, right?
We don't own any cars, correct.
Yeah, so they're owned by your community. But will you always be based on cars, or are you thinking in terms of other forms of sharing transport? Obviously, there's a lot of players in that field as well. Is that something you're thinking about plugging into or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that we've kind of thought about, and I think Hire really is the brand. For us, really, it's like, okay, how can there's lots of things out there that sit idle. So is there people with boats, for example? I imagine they sit idle quite a lot and they're not used. How can we potentially connect more people that need to use that boat? There's lots of things that I think in the future we could do. I think we are completely focused at the moment on cars. There's just so many of them that sit idle, and it's such a big challenge to the biggest car hire community out there by people sharing their vehicles. So 30 million in the UK, so that's enough to get started. So it might be a bit sitting on the fence here. It's something we've definitely thought about, but at the moment, and I think for the next 5, 6, however many years, it will be, let's really solve the mobility problem. It's a huge challenge, and one that we're excited to take on.
Amazing. I already hinted at it. There's a lot of players now in the mobility field, urban mobility field. If I go out in London, it may look quite differently in other cities in the UK, but you go to London and you see Zip cars everywhere, you see Drive Nows, you see, enterprise car clubs. So everybody's trying to move into car sharing. There is a big competitor you have as well that offers a similar platform called Getaround, who's been acquiring your former European competitor, Driveys. Then Elon Musk has actually announced a while ago that everybody's going to be able to share their Tesla just on an app. So I can just get my neighbor's Tesla to come and pick me up. How do you think about this whole space? It seems really competitive. It seems like really hard to break through. How do you think about that space and these different players?
So it is fascinating, and we have meetings and we know all of the guys really well. My the ex-MD of Zipcar has been part of our team for 3 years. We focus on, and this is the difference. To give you some context, when we started, there were 3 other peer-to-peer sharing companies in the UK. They were all much larger than us, one of them being Easycar, and we sat with Stelios about a year ago. And his first question to me was, how have you made a success out of this where we haven't? Which is interesting. But what we've been really great at, and we have people now, that if you go into Trustpilot, for example, you look at our reviews versus anybody else out there, our Trustpilot score is far superior than any other company. And that's because we are extremely good at listening to what's important to our members. So we work with our drivers to help them get a car when and where they want it. And our view is, if we just keep on doing really great things with that, we kind of, I wouldn't say win, but we don't really focus too much on those guys. We work with our owners as partners to do good things for drivers. And I think lots of companies out there would say they're member focused. Why would you say any different? To actually say it and do it is quite a thing. So the Hiyacar, I suppose our system is just we're just all very good at really understanding what's important to drivers. Getting under the bonnet, it's quite an awful pun, but really, really listening to drivers. What is the core reason they've come to us? Like I say, they have all these other options, but people come to us, and it's just, when they do, let's understand why and get them a car as when and where they want it. So fascinating space. So I did tell Drivey this, actually. We was with them a couple of months ago. In July and August, we didn't spend any marketing money. We're not going to beat these guys on Google and Facebook. They've raised over half a billion compared to our 10 million. But people would see other forms of advertising. So Get Around and Drivey. If you go into your Google browser now and Google something similar, those names and similar, Hiyacar appears. And so in July and August, we actually doubled each month our bookings by 50%. At the time, we weren't doing anything, and people were seeing these guys. They were kind of doing our awareness and then reading the reviews, actually trying the other platforms and coming to us saying, "Oh, it works much better for me as a driver and an owner." And game on. So I think the really exciting opportunity we have, and we do actually meet up, is the awareness of what we all do is any form of car sharing is so low in the UK. So I think we're all very good at actually sitting around and working together to actually kind of, that's the winner is, say, society and the environment if more people share. So our challenge is between us, really. Let's kind of work together on raising awareness in what we do, and then let the members decide who they want to use, what works best for them.
How do you see things evolve with urban transport and maybe looking at the policy side of things? I think London especially has been really focused on transport, has a lot of issues with it as well. It's been introducing low emission zones in central London, and it's definitely not perfect, although we probably have one of the better public transport systems in the world. But how do you see things evolve, and how do you see your company part of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the UK are quite behind on this. You see lots of examples elsewhere in Europe where cities literally just ban cars unless they're a shared car. So for us, it all helps. There will always be a need for car, but to have a shared transport system is much better for everyone. So we've been quite lucky. We talk to the authorities on quite a regular basis. The government, so we had various meetings at Number 10, and this is for the sharing economy actually as a whole. The government are really behind all the platforms out there because of the benefits. So I think there's definitely more to come, and we definitely for that. So hopefully we can. I think the UK, we lead the way in quite a lot of areas, but this is definitely an area that we need to catch up and learn from other countries.
Let's talk a bit about your entrepreneurial journey. Actually, before you started Hiyacar, your last job was to be a performance and risk analyst.
Yeah.
So from my perception, seems very different from an entrepreneurial position, right? So how did you make that step and that transition? And what was one of the most challenging parts for you to become a co-founder and CEO of a high growth company?
Yeah. So I've always been very curious by nature, which I think helps. And I think actually the experience in my, say, previous roles is actually, I kind of see that one of my responsibilities as CEO is obviously you're always kind of looking at risk and rewards. So even though it's a different, it's not other people, it's not other people's money as such that you're kind of looking after. It's, you always got that kind of, that responsibility, I suppose, to do good things for members, do good things for team members, our investors and partners. So, I think that experience actually really helped. I tried doing a peer-to-peer house selling platform myself and two others about 10 years ago called Matching Properties. And this was before anything, Airbnb, any crowdfunding. And I think, the important thing is if you're solving a need for yourself. So my wife and I, we sold our first house. The estate agent charged us a fortune and they didn't do anything. So we were like, okay. Well, I was just thinking there must be a better way of doing this. And back then I was a lot younger and not as experienced. So I think the learnings from spending a lot of time in the city and just having that constant curiosity and being relentless with your persistence of actually getting things done is, I suppose, is key really. And it's just trusting your gut instinct, getting good advice and just believing in yourself.
Mm-hmm. What's your advice to people exploring the mobility sector and wanting to start a company in the space besides don't start a competitor to Hiyacar?
That's fine. More the merrier. So one, I definitely say it's just such an exciting space. We're quite fortunate to speak to car manufacturers, all different cycles of the mobility chain. And I think nobody really has the answer. From our view, you're always going to, I think one thing that everyone does agree is that people are going to own less and share more. So that's exciting for a platform that does that. But there's going to be so much change that's going on, and I think more change in the next 5-10 years than there has been in the last 50 odd years. So it's a great space, lots of bits going on there. And I think, so we're talking about kind of bike sharing, there's lots of examples where people have tried stuff and for some reason it's not worked. So I don't know, I think there's lots of opportunity. I think if it's a problem that you're kind of solving for yourself, that is really important. You've got to love what you do. It's just, otherwise you just won't go those extra yards to make a real difference. And I think just be really, just do good things for your customers. And we call them members, but you can I think there's a huge opportunity out there. So I would definitely not be afraid to try something that someone else has tried, because there might be a better way of doing it. Or
amazing.
Or different ways. Yeah, it's fascinating. It truly is.
Let's think about 10 years from now. If Hiyacar succeeds with what you want to do, how does the world look like in 10 years?
Yeah, like I say, just a Hiyacar on every street. That's it. It's so, like I say, you've used the product. It's such a simple idea. And then my kind of, you just want everyone to be doing it. It's just a great way to meet people. It's just, great for getting those cars off the roads. A really important point for us is kind of reducing that, the huge financial gap that there is between wealth and poor. Lots of people own a car. And it's just a great way to make a lot of money and to actually help people. So I think 10 years time, it's more Hiyacars out there, more people being connected through the platform, and just a healthier and happier world, I suppose. It's just, it's exciting to think where we're going to go next, really, when you come out for the UK.
Amazing. Thanks very much for joining me today, and you've been on a great journey. Everybody should check out Hiyacar for sure, especially if you live around London. Thanks for taking the time, and all the best.
No, pleasure. So thank you, and hopefully it's been of use to listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with a friend. To keep updated on new episodes, visit ImpactHustlers.com and sign up for our email alerts. And also follow us on Twitter at Impact Hustlers. Thanks very much for tuning in, and see you next week.
This was Impact Hustlers, the podcast on entrepreneurs and change makers that are creating solutions to the world's biggest problems. Impact Hustlers is brought to you by Fast Forward 2030 and Real Changers. Visit fastforward2030.com to learn how to include the global goals into your business model, and realchangers.com to find talent and careers with impact.